Hello. This is another video where I drive around aimlessly in my car, wasting a bunch of very expensive gas to talk about my car. We're in the Flocus, my 2010 Ford Focus. And a few weeks ago, I took this thing in for an oil change and a tire rotation. And when they came out to give me my keys back, they essentially told me that I have a year to buy a new car. Why on earth would that be? Well, what they told me specifically was that my inner rocker panels are rotten. I didn't even know inner rocker panels were a thing. A year ago, I had the, I guess, outer rocker panels replaced on this thing. I've been planning on doing an update video about this car for a long time, but I kept delaying it because there were, and there still are, issues with this car, although not drivability issues, that I planned on getting fixed, and then I would make the update video. But some things have changed now, because by this time next year, this car will either be in a scrapyard or it'll be with a new owner who chose to save it. I don't know which it'll be. So I forget if I think it was a year ago, or was it? I was living in my old apartment. I don't even remember how long ago it was. I think it was a year ago. I had the outer rocker panels on this thing replaced. It must have been a year ago, because I found out that the rocker panels were rotten and the car wasn't going to pass inspection when I took it for its last inspection, which was September of 2022. They told me that I took it in for an inspection. The inspection failed. It failed because I forget what it even was now. I think it was control arms or something in the front suspension that were bad. Something like that. And my rocker panels were rotten. So I have a friend who I'm lucky to have. He's worked on this car a few times, always on the brakes, because I've had 2 brake calipers lock up, and so he's done a lot of brake work on this thing. Well, I'm very lucky that I was able to buy new rocker panels at Napa, and they were something like $300 for the pair of them, aftermarket rockers. I think a lot lower quality than the originals, because now a year later, those rockers are now starting to rust and they look pretty darn ugly. But I was able to buy the rockers for like $300, and my friend was able to weld them on. He welded them on, and of course this car is a light green in color. What my friend did was he painted the new rockers. The new rockers were unpainted. He painted them with truck bed liner, like a really heavy-duty bed liner, and so they're black. And this car looks so freaking awesome with black rocker panels. I loved how it looked. Unfortunately, they're pretty ugly now, despite that heavy-duty truck bed liner paint type stuff. Rust has already come through. Rust is like showing through that bed liner, and also rock chips and stuff have indeed managed to peel it off. 4-way stop. And so the new rockers, although there's no holes in them or anything, they are now rusted and there's paint missing on them and they look pretty darn ugly. But it saved this car a year ago, when a lot of people may have chosen to scrap the car if it was in this condition. It's also kind of surprising because there are still a lot of second generation Flocuses on the roads around here, and some of them have freaking, like, half the rocker is gone, dissolved because of rust. And so it makes me wonder, there are definitely mechanics around here that you can basically buy an inspection sticker from. Give them $50, they'll give you an inspection sticker. Doesn't matter what condition your car is actually in. And a lot of people around here know who those mechanics are, and they use them because, unfortunately, hard economic times, people can't afford to get their cars fixed. And so there are some unsafe cars, including a lot of second generation Focuses on the roads here. With inspection stickers that were basically just bought. I go to a mechanic that I trust highly. They do their job properly. You do not buy stickers from them. They do perform proper inspections. They inspected this car and it failed. However, I got the front suspension fixed. I got the new rocker panels put on. Got a new inspection sticker. 2-year inspections in New Brunswick, which I don't agree with. It should be a year because of the salt and stuff on our roads. Anyway, so we are now a year later. In that time, I had sway bar end links replaced. I had a knocking sound. They found the source of it, sway bar end links. They replaced them, fixed that knocking sound. Great. Oh, I also had new tires put on last year. That's another reason this thing failed inspection. My tires were bald on the inside. I never knew they were bald because the outside still had tread, but I guess camber or something. The insides of my tires were bald. So I had new tires put on too. Just cheap all-season tires. Pretty good. A lot better than... They're not as high-grade tires as the tires they replaced, but new, cheap tires are an awful lot quieter and smoother than worn-out, better tires. Yeah, so yeah, that was another reason I failed the inspection back then. So where was I? Oh, the day I picked this car up after the new rocker panels were put on, I had a check engine light. I don't know if my friend did something, if when he was welding he accidentally broke a wire or a plug or something to part of the evap system, but this thing is now throwing 2 evap codes. One that says the fuel tank pressure is, I don't know if the code means it's preposterous or what, but something with the fuel tank pressure. And then the other code, I actually forget what the other code is for. It's been a year, so I no longer remember. Doesn't affect the drivability of the car. My friend's guess is that, you know, and I know this is just as likely that he actually didn't do anything, that it was pure coincidence when I had the new rockers put on, and when I started the car for the first time after that, it had a check engine light. My friend's guess is that the evap purge valve is stuck. Very common. They have a Ford Explorer that's about the same age as this car. It had the same thing. Now, a common symptom of a bad evap purge valve is that you gas up the car and then it struggles to start afterwards. And the reason for that is when you put in gas, the fuel vapor in the tank obviously gets pushed out of the tank and it goes wherever it can happen to go. In a properly working evap system, the purge valve is closed when the car's not running, and so any excess pressure just gets vented. I don't know if it gets vented to the outside of the car or somewhere else. Let this guy go by. But sometimes evap purge valves get stuck open, and so a symptom is you gas up the car and it struggles to start because the engine actually floods as a result of all the fuel vapor going directly into the intake, which it shouldn't do. My friend thinks that the evap purge valve in this car is probably stuck closed, so I'm not getting that symptom of it struggling to start. This thing is running perfectly. It has always run perfectly since the last time we did an update video. But because the evap purge valve is stuck closed, if that's indeed what it is, it can't purge the fuel vapor from the tank when it needs to, so instead it just dumps it out the vent. And so that's what my check engine light's for. That's his guess. I actually have I have a new purge valve right here. I bought it for 175 bucks. It's been sitting in my back seat for like 8 months because I wanted to put it on myself, but I haven't because I'm scared of breaking something. So yeah, that's just sitting there. Stupid money sitting in my back seat. So anyway, I've been dealing with this check engine light. It's not a drivability issue, and so I've just left it. So we're back to now. Recently, I brought the car in for an oil change and a tire rotation. You're welcome. Oh, and I also brought it in because I had a new knocking sound in the back. Turns out that is worn out rear control arm bushings. They told me it's not a safety issue. I can either get it fixed for $800 or I can leave it and it's not a safety issue. I would have gladly paid the $800 to get it fixed, but now I'm not going to because they also told me my inner rocker panels are rotten. I've never heard of inner rocker panels. Did some Googling, couldn't really find anything. I'm in a Ford Focus owners group on Facebook. I consulted them. They told me what the shop is probably referring to is the literal frame of the car. And they recommended, or most people recommended that I don't deal with it because that's a safety issue, and even if I get it fixed, it means the rest of the car is compromised by rust, which it almost definitely is, and I just shouldn't dump any more money into a car that's dissolving back into the earth. The shop told me, and they're probably right, there is a guy, a local guy, independent body guy, well, not really body guy, but just a metal worker guy, a guy who does metal work, and he actually specializes in patching up cars with bad rocker panels, welding in new rocker panels, because that's a common issue with cars around here. Cars here last about 5 years before rust starts setting in, unless you're super duper proactive, get it rust checked every year. That's what I recommend people do, is go to a rust check place and get it rust checked every single year. That's what my grandfather did for his 92 Toyota pickup. That truck is still on the road and it looks beautiful. We didn't do that with this car. When I bought the car from my mom in 2019, I started getting it rust checked. It was too late. I didn't know it at the time, but it was too late. This car was undercoated when it was new. Back then, I don't think it was common knowledge that undercoating really isn't good. It does more harm than good most times. Today, it's common knowledge that undercoating, it's not worth it. Don't undercoat your cars, just get it rust checked every year. So yeah, it was too late for this thing by the time I bought it from my mom. My Focus driving peers told me that they were probably referring to the actual frame of the car, or you know, whatever counts as a frame in a unibody vehicle. And it's probably not worth my time or money to get it fixed. Oh yeah, I was talking about the metalworking guy. There's a local guy who does metalwork. The shop told me he could probably patch it up. And assuming he can do that, and he'd probably ask for $1,000 or something to do that, I could get it done. And this car may go for another 5, 10, 20, who knows how many years. I could get this car patched up and it could go for years and years. I have decided not to take that route. I could take that route, the money's not an issue. I'm deciding not to do that. And there's a few reasons why. First of all, I drive a lot for my job. I drive all over the county. I drive over 1,000 kilometers a month for my job. We don't have a company car. It is imperative that I have a good, reliable vehicle to do that with. I don't think this car can be that anymore. At least I'm not willing to take that chance. There have been so many little things go wrong with this car. Rear control arms, front control arms. They told me my shocks are getting weak too. A sway bar. Brake calipers that keep sticking. The shop has had to fix so many issues on this car that they now joke to me about how pretty soon I'll just have a brand new car because of how many things they've had to fix. They have sympathized with me about how much work this car has needed in the past couple of years. And that shop, they're the guys I've been taking this car to for the past 2 years or so. Low tire pressure, look at that. They said it's unusual in their opinion how many things I've needed to get fixed on this car. I hope that's actually just my leaking tire and not a puncture tire from driving on that gravel. I should probably head back to the house, pump it up, dump my dash cam, and then continue this story. So I'll unplug the dash cam and then we'll come back. I'm back. I peed, aired up my tire, and dumped my dash cam. Speaking of dash cam, I did get a new dash cam, a real dash cam. It's a Garmin dash cam tandem. Obviously you can see it films outside and inside. It was about $400 and I love it. I used to work in insurance, or I used to work for an insurance brokerage. Everybody should have a dash cam. In countries overseas, in many countries, it's commonplace. It's almost expected. Not so much in this part of the world. I highly recommend everybody has a dash cam. You never know when it's going to save your butt. Even if, now this was an expensive dash cam because Garmin's pretty much the only like real brand name that makes dash cams. Everyone else is just nameless Chinese companies. But even if you get one of those for much cheaper, you know, that's better than nothing. I used to have an old Video 8 camcorder glued to my dash. That obviously didn't last long with the hot summers and the cold winters. But I've always wanted a real dash cam, and now I've got one. And I've been very happy with it. The quality's fine. Not as good as some other dash cams, but it's fine. I love that it can record inside and outside. This thing has captured a lot of great memories with me and a friend in the passenger seat that we get to look at afterwards. Yeah, I recommend it. So I was talking about the reasons why I am choosing not to consult this metal worker who may possibly be able to save this car. Actually, I'm not sure if there's more than one reason, but I was saying I don't think this, I have a duty because of my work to have reliable transportation. I drive a lot for my job. We don't have a company car. I need to have a reliable car. If my car breaks down, I literally can't do my job. Or at least I can't do a lot of parts of my job. If I have to drive to a remote location to tape a show or tape a news story, it doesn't get taped. I used to be comfortable knowing that if something ever did happen to this car and it had to be laid up a while, which has happened a couple of times in the past when brake calipers froze up and stuff, that this thing's, you know, one brake caliper that froze on this thing was off the road for 2 weeks until my friend could work on it. I had my mother's car. My mother let me borrow her car. I'm forever grateful that she allowed me to do that at the times that I needed it. I don't have that anymore. My mom actually stopped driving last year. And good for her, to be honest. The money, the stress, it just wasn't worth it to her. So she uses, I'm gonna go this way. She uses methods of public transportation that we have available here. Sold her car back to the dealership, and I'm happy for her. But it also means I've lost that lifeline. If I had a spouse or a significant other who also had a car, I would absolutely take this thing into that metal worker and get it patched up so that it would pass inspection again. But I don't have that support. I don't have that safety net either. I live alone. I'm alone, and this car is all I got. My personal vehicle is all I have. Oh, I made a bad choice apparently. What do I want to do? I'll go up here and okay. So I don't have safety nets anymore if this thing gets taken off the road because of some issue. God forbid, you know, something drastic happens like a transmission failure or something. I'm very thankful that nothing that serious has ever happened to this car. And so there's that reason. And the other thing is that I'm so tired of being stressed out. This car has been a giant stressor to me for most of the time that I've owned it. Ever since the first brake caliper lockup, which was the first issue I ever had with this car, it's been a constant stressor. Not necessarily because things keep going wrong, because at the end of the day, they've all been small things. What are you doing? A lot of people around here don't realize that that's a three-way stop. I had the right of way. It's not necessarily because of the things that have happened with this car, because they've all been relatively minor things. But now every day I get in this thing and I think, when is something gonna happen that's gonna leave me stranded and panicking and in a really bad spot? When is my head gasket gonna blow? When is the transmission gonna fail? When is something, you know, something else in the driveline or the suspension? When is something really bad gonna happen that puts me in a really bad situation because I can't do my job, the sole job that I have that pays me money so I can be alive and have a roof over my head and everything else? It is such a stressor. And like I said earlier, I could get the inner rocker panels in this car patched up. This car could go another 20 years. Or there could be a major failure before I get home at the end of this video. And I don't know that. I don't know. It's complete unknown, and that's the case with any car. You know, a new car, the same thing could happen. Sometimes unlucky people have new cars, and they need a new engine put in with only 500 kilometers on the vehicle. You know, it happens to everybody. But we need to be realistic here. This is a 14-year-old car, no, 13 and a half year old car. It's been subject to the harsh Canadian winters, the amount of salt we've had that we put on the roads here, which we do for a reason, for safety reasons. And I'm rambling, but when is something bad gonna happen that's gonna really disrupt my ability to go about my daily life? We don't know. And I've decided I want to strike out that unknown. I am in a good position right now where I know I need a new car, but I have a perfect running, driving car, and I can still do everything I need to do. I have a year to buy a new car, and that's so great that I'm in this situation where I know I need to buy a new car, but my old car is still running and driving fine. If, God forbid, something terrible happened with this, engine failure, transmission failure, whatever, and I had to panic and buy a new car immediately, that wouldn't be a good situation to be in. So I'm taking the opportunity to throw in the towel while I'm ahead, and I'm gonna buy a new car. Like I said, if my livelihood didn't depend on me having reliable transportation all the time, or if I had a significant other, if I had, or even if my mom was still driving, if I had some sort of safety net, I might go ahead, call up the metal worker, and pay $1,000 or whatever he charges to get this thing inspected for at least another 2 years. But I'm throwing in the towel. This car is at the end of its life, in my opinion. And it's too bad because this car is only 80,000 miles on it. It's got 134,000 kilometers. That's about 80,000 miles. Ford Focuses, at least of this generation and the first generation, regularly in the southern US and places where rust isn't an issue, regularly reach 200,000 kilometers or more. Mazda engine in this thing, incredibly reliable engine, the Mazda L engine. 4-speed, old school slush box automatic, very reliable. The actual powertrain in these cars is very reliable. And a couple of people, I think there's been a few people in my Ford Focus group on Facebook who got 300,000 kilometers out of their car. I spoke to one person, they got 400,000 kilometers out of their car before rust took it out of commission. And so the fact that this car has only 134,000 kilometers, 80,000 miles, that's a sin. It's really, really too bad, but that is the reality of a car subject to maritime winters, maritime road salt. The car was undercoated when it was new, and it was never rust checked until it was 9 years old, and it was already gone by that time, and that's too bad. Hindsight is 20/20. I was a kid when we bought this car. If I knew then what I knew today, I would have advocated not to get it undercoated and to get it rust checked every single year. And this car would probably still be on the road. It's especially a sin that this car is gonna be taken off the road, because the car that this car replaced, we had a 2001 Chevy Cavalier. And when my dad died, for reasons I'm not gonna get to, when my dad died, we had to spend, oh look at that, it's this car. When my dad died, we had to buy a new car. I'm not going to get into those reasons. So we sold our 2001 Cavalier and bought this car. That 2001 Chevy Cavalier is still on the road. I see it back where my mom lives. I see it on the roads, and I know it's that car because I know the license plate number. It's still on the road, and it's going to outlive the car that replaced it. That is terrible. That sucks. Now, with all this said, I gotta turn around here. I'm heading to my mom's house. I'm not going over until tomorrow. With all that said, unless whatever dealership I buy a new car from offers me a reasonable trade-in on this car, I'm going to put this car on Facebook Marketplace, probably try and get $2,000 for it. Whoever buys it, if that's what happens, they could get it fixed, and this car may indeed live another 20 years. But it's not going to be me that does it. I've decided to throw in the towel. It's just going to be a lot less stressful to me if I could have something new, something good quality, reliable, that I don't have to worry about for the next 10, 15 years at least. So, that's what's going to happen. Car has check engine light. I might still see if I can throw that part in, see if it solves that. I need new rear control arms. I'm not going to bother with that. They said it's not a safety issue. And my inspection runs out September 2024. And so I've got until then to buy a new car. So I've started researching immediately. I've actually spoken to dealerships. I'm hoping to start test driving cars soon. So you're probably itching to know, what am I gonna buy? I am gonna buy new, or at least I'm hoping to buy new. 1 year ago, someone I love was in the same situation. He had a 2010 Nissan Xterra, and it had a rotten frame. He was in the same situation as me, and he chose to buy new. And the reason he chose to buy new, even though historically it made so much sense back in the day to buy used, he decided to buy new because used car prices were, and still are today, so inflated that it makes better financial sense to buy new. And it's still like that. At least in our area, that's what it's like. I've gone to the used car dealerships. The used car dealers around here will sell you a 2015 car. Let's say a 2015 Ford Escape with 150,000 kilometers on it, and they'll ask for $20,000 for a car that's halfway worn out, more kilometers than this thing has. You gotta buy, when you're buying used, at least in this area, you gotta look at something that has at least 200,000 kilometers before you get below $15,000. You gotta look at something older than this car before you get below $10,000. This car, at least a year ago, before there was any knowledge of its of the condition of its frame, a year ago this car would have been worth probably $6,000 or $7,000. That's how inflated used car prices are. I do not want to pay $20,000 for a car that's already halfway through its lifespan. I want to buy new. So here's my plan. I want to buy a small crossover. I like crossovers. A lot of people hate them. I like them. I've always been a fan of station wagons my whole life. To me, crossovers are slightly lifted, slightly curvier station wagons. And I love crossovers. I want to get a small crossover. I'm considering several of them. And I'm hoping to look at all of them. Ideally test drive all of them, although I don't think that'll be possible for reasons we'll get to in a bit. My number one choice, the first thing that came to my mind, was a Toyota Corolla Cross. I've believed in Toyota quality my entire life. I spoke earlier, my grandfather has a 92 Toyota pickup, beautiful truck that still works perfectly. And here we're gonna pass ourselves again. Is that for sale? Oh my God, it's for sale! Oh man, another Flocus for sale. Should I buy it? No, I'm not going to. I did get a glimpse of the rockers. It has the original rockers, but they are a bit rusty. How about that? How funny is that? Can you imagine I bought a second identical green Ford Focus? Just used it as like a parts car or something. My first choice is a Toyota Corolla Cross. My second choice is a Nissan Qashqai. Someone I love, the one who had the Nissan Xterra that he had to get rid of, he owns a Nissan Rogue. The first time I sat in that thing, I was so amazed at how nice of a car it is. I've never been in the know about Nissans. Nissan's always been sort of that otherworldly thing that I didn't know a lot about to me. I found the 2010 Nissan Xterra to be a far more primitive and far poorer quality car than this car is. But a 2022 Rogue, that is a nice automobile, and a lot of people say that Nissan has really started upping their game in the last few years. In recent years, they've had a lot of issues with the continuously variable transmissions. Supposedly in the last couple of years, those issues have been resolved. The person I love who has the Nissan Rogue, they've driven, I don't know how many tens of thousands of kilometers in it already in the past year. They've had zero problems with it. It's been a perfectly fine car. And I am just always impressed when I sit in it. And I've driven it too. I've always been impressed with how nice it is inside. Now the Rogue, it's a $40,000 car. That's above my budget. Qashqai is a bit lower price, around $30,000. That's my budget, is around the $30,000 MSRP mark. So Toyota Corolla Cross, Nissan Qashqai. My next choice is the Honda HR-V. Again, exactly the same segment. Another choice is the Mazda CX-30. Another choice is the new Chevrolet Trax. Just this summer, Chevrolet completely reimagined the Trax. It's a completely different automobile now. And then finally, the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross. So those are the 6, I think, cars that I'm considering. Now here's the details so far as I have them. Honda is pricing the HR-V so much higher than every other vehicle on my list. A base HRV starts at like $34,000 here, MSRP, and once a fully equipped one is like $42,000 for a compact or subcompact, whatever they call it, crossover. That's ridiculous. Honda is so much more expensive than everybody else. In addition to that, the local Honda dealership, local-ish Honda dealerships, an hour and a half away, they have a few HRVs in inventory. And it would appear that you can get a Honda HRV in any color you want as long as it's black, white, or gray. And let me tell you, if I'm going to spend $30,000, every penny I've ever saved in my life, plus a lot more, on this new vehicle, I'm going to get it in the color I like. If I'm going to have this vehicle until I'm 40, hopefully, if not older, I'm going to get a color I want. Obviously, I'm driving a light green car. It's almost one of a kind, aside for one back there that's for sale. I like my pretty colors. I do not want a black, white, or gray car. For that and the price, because of those, I'm not considering the Honda HRV. Struck off the list. The Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, I really like how they look. And some people say that Mitsubishi quality is great. Others have said that it's not great. So there's some minor worry there. But the other thing is that there are rumors that Mitsubishi is going to be pulling out of the automotive market in the next few years. There's obviously nothing official, but people have suspicions. And the reason is because, first of all, Mitsubishi, their cars are not popular. They make very little money on their cars. Mitsubishi is a industrial giant. They could wipe out their cars tomorrow, and the company will be around for probably centuries to come because they make excavators and backhoes and skid steers and everything else. Ships, I think they have a shipbuilding business. And Mitsubishi has already stopped selling cars in Europe. There's suspicions that they're going to stop selling them here in the next few years. I would be horrified if I bought a vehicle and the manufacturer ceased to exist in the automotive market during the time I owned that car. For that reason, I'm more or less striking the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross off my list. Too bad, because it's a little more affordable than the others, and I really like how they look. I love Mitsubishi styling. It reminds me of Ford's styling in the late 2000s, early 2010s, like this car has. The Chevrolet Trax. I'm still considering it, but I think it's going to be at the bottom of my list. The reason is because I'm a big fan of old GM. I'm not a fan of modern GM. GM was never the same after their bankruptcy 15 years ago. The cars are made in South Korea, most of their cars, including the Trax. And there are some GM diehards who think the quality's fine. There are others who think it's pretty poor. The other thing is that the new Chevrolet Trax, it's got a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder engine, turbocharged. Makes like 130 horsepower. That's amazing. GM's been doing 3-cylinder engines for the last few years now, and they're really pioneering being able to squeeze a lot of power out of a tiny engine. But people are worried about the quality. 20 years ago, a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder engine would have made 60, 70 horsepower. Now they're making 130. What's the reliability going to be like on an engine with that much stress? Especially because it's turbocharged as well. So people are worried about that. Now, with that said, the 1.2 and 1.3 liter 3-cylinders that GM has been making them for the past few years, they've more or less proven themselves to be perfectly competent engines. There's been no major issues. I say major. There's obviously been the odd person that I've read about who has needed an engine replacement because of a major failure. But for the most part, the engines have been proven as being competent engines, but there's some minor worries there, especially if I'm buying something that I intend to keep for 10 or 15 years. I will still consider the Trax. I love how it looks. It comes in an awesome color. I've seen one so far. That's how I learned about it. I've seen one. I'm not sure the car is even available in Canada yet. The one I saw was over the border in the United States. What is this person doing? Speaking of United States, main license plate. I love how it looks. The one I saw over the border was yellow. Holy shit, that's a cool looking car. Reminds me of the Pontiac Aztek because it's got a lot of plastic cladding. A lot of people hate it. I think it's great. Also, it protects the paint. It's a cool looking car. It's also the most affordable car out of all the ones I'm considering. It's also, I think, one of the largest cars of all the ones I'm considering. It's a big car. It's bigger than the Trailblazer. It's a really roomy car, especially for something powered by a 3-cylinder engine. So a lot of people are saying that there's a ton of value to be had. GM is probably purposely selling the car to have an affordable but roomy car in an economy where a small crossover is now $30,000 here in Canada. MSRP. I keep saying MSRP because the dealerships are happily adding $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on top of that because supply is still a big problem. I'm gonna go this way. Ooh. So that's the Chevrolet Trax. I think it'll be at the bottom of my list. I'm still considering it. I think that leaves... Oh, don't enter, it says. Okay, I won't. I don't go down that street normally. One-way street. I forget that it's even one way. So I think that leaves the Mazda CX-30. The Mazda CX-30 is actually the most recent one that I've considered. And I initially wasn't considering it just because I never think of Mazda. I never think of them. They are just so under the radar. Also, I'm not a giant fan of their styling. Oh, look at this. Hey, little buddy. Oh, it's a buck. You gonna cross? I guess not. I'm not a giant fan of Mazda's styling. I find it, there's nothing wrong with it, I just find it very plain. However, I've started looking, first of all, lots of people are comparing Mazda's quality to Honda and Toyota. Once again, this car has a Mazda engine in it, the Mazda L engine. I believe the same engine was used in the Mazda 3 in 2010. And people consider Mazda to be very high quality, and I would dare argue the same. I looked at video reviews of the CX-30. Holy crap, I can't believe how nice the interior of it is. People are shaming the Corolla Cross for having a very plasticky, cheap feeling interior. The Chevrolet Trax, excuse me, is also a bit on the plasticky side. The Mazda CX-30, as well as I've talked about the Nissan Qashqai. Nissan's really stepping up the quality of their interiors. Mazda also has an impeccably high quality interior. It looks like and feels like, based on these video reviews, something from a luxury car. Soft touch leather or pleather or whatever, all soft touch, no hard plastics. It looks and feels very premium. Mazda is really punching above their weight in terms of interior quality and interior niceness. People have directly compared it with the Toyota Corolla Cross. They say there's no contest. Way better interior, also much more comfortable in the CX-30. And that's what I care about. I care about reliability and durability first, comfort second. Lots of people are talking about how these crossovers with their 130, 150 horsepower engines, they're saying, oh, they're so slow. I don't give a crap. It'll merge onto a highway, and that's fine. But I want something reliable, durable, also something slightly bigger in this car because I have to carry the equivalent of a 3-camera television studio in it. And also I want something comfortable because I drive a lot. And I'm a large person. I'm 6 foot, 285 pounds and dropping. So I want something that fits me well as well, which this car does. So I can't imagine any of the new crossovers will be any smaller than the Flocus. But I couldn't believe how nice the interior of the Mazda CX-30 is. And people are really singing praises about the reliability. Aside from the tracks, all of the other vehicles have 4-cylinder engines, either naturally aspirated in the case of the Toyota and I think the Honda, or turbocharged, I believe, in the case of the Nissan and the Mazda. So all 4-cylinder engines compared to the 3-cylinder in the track. So I would certainly personally trust any of those other cars to have a long-lasting engine. Mazda is also an old-school automatic instead of a CVT, 6-speed automatic, so those are points for reliability as well. Although Toyota has a cool CVT that has a real first gear, so it has a real first gear that you start off in, and then it shifts into the CVT. So, here's my feelings so far. I'm not going to turn there. Well, here's what I've done so far, actually. I've spoken to the local GM dealership. We do have an actually local GM dealership. It's only 20 minutes from here, or half an hour, or whatever. They don't have any tracks as yet, which I knew. They told me that they are expecting to have some come in the next few weeks. So I'm going to be keeping my eyes peeled and checking, and I'm hoping I have the opportunity, maybe in the next few weeks, to sit inside a Trax, test drive it, see what it's like. I recently spoke on the phone to the local Toyota dealership, and the inventory situation's the same. They've got a couple coming in December. I asked them if they expect the inventory issues to resolve in the next year. They said no. It's always going to be a situation, they think, where they're not going to have any on the lot. If you want to get one, you have to order it 6 months ahead of time. 6 months is how long it's taking for these cars to come in. I'm not sure. I read something that suggested that the Corolla Cross is built in the United States. Although I think I read something else that they're built in Japan, so I'm not sure. But either way, it takes 6 months from ordering for them to get here, or at least get into Canada, or at least this part of Canada. So that's the situation with that. So I say I have a year to buy a new car. With all the inventory issues happening, I really might only have 6 months, because I have to have a car in my hand before the inspection on this thing runs out, lest I drive a car with expired inspection, which some people do around here as well. But I don't want to accidentally back myself into that corner. I have not contacted the Mazda dealership yet. I intend to. Maybe today I will shoot them an email and I'll see what their inventory situation's like. They don't list their inventory on their website for some reason, so I'm gonna have to talk to them to figure out what their situation's like. But either way, I am hoping in the next few months to have laid hands on every car on my list. And I think right now, my number one choice is, I'm gonna go this way. God, I'm burning gas. My number one choice is a tie for the Toyota Corolla Cross because I believe highly in Toyota quality, and the Mazda CX-30 because Mazda is putting so much effort into the quality and comfort of the automobiles that they make. So that's a tie. So I'm looking forward to talking to the Mazda dealership, see what the inventory's like, and eventually hash out numbers with everybody. Hash out numbers with Toyota, hash out numbers with GM, hash out numbers with Mazda, and see what it's like. See what the money situation's gonna be like. I am lucky and blessed to be in a situation where I can afford, or at least I think I can afford, to buy one of these vehicles. Every penny I've ever saved in my life will be spent on this vehicle, and then I'll still be financing and paying the rest of it off for a few years. But I think I can do it. I'm very thankful to be in a situation where I can do that, because I know there's an awful lot of people who, if they were in my situation, they couldn't do that. They would be forced to buy used, or they'd be forced to buy a more affordable car, which would be a sedan or a small hatchback or something. With that said, finances are going to be very tight once I hopefully have this vehicle in my hands. But I think I can do it. We'll certainly find that out in the next few months. But that's it. I think I've burned enough gas. That's the story. The Flocus is coming to the end of her life, unless someone else decides to buy it and save it if I don't trade it in. I'm sad. I love this car. I do. I've known this car since I was 16 years old. I'm now almost 30. This car took me home from my high school graduation. It took me to my first day of university. It took me home from my last day of university. I learned to drive on this car at the age of 22. And this is the first car I've ever owned after I bought it off my mother. My mother and I both have fantastic memories in this car. The first thing we did after we bought it was we drove it to Prince Edward Island. And then next summer we drove it to Prince Edward Island again. So this car has done 2 long-haul trips. When my ex and I started dating, I would drive 2.5 hours to Bangor, Maine to see her in this car. And it was an enjoyable drive as well. I made multiple drives in this car. And now for the last 1.5 years, it's been a work vehicle, hauling television equipment to and from remote locations, and it's been fantastic at that. I'm really gonna miss this car. This car has a lot of character, and despite all the minor issues, I consider this car to have been very good to me, as it's been very good to my mother when she owned it as well. However, I'm ready to throw in the towel. I want to have a new car before this car starts breaking down majorly. I don't want to back myself into a corner where I start not being able to go about my daily life because this car starts falling apart more than it already is. So I'm thankful for the service this car's given me. I've put 54,000 kilometers on it during the time that I've owned it. And if situations were different, I would absolutely continue, get this car fixed and continue to baby it along for as long as I could. But I'm not in those circumstances, so I'm not going to do that. I'm looking very forward to having a new car. It's going to be extremely exciting. I'm hoping everything pans out money-wise and everything. Right now, I think it'll pan out, but we're still months ahead before I really finalize all the numbers and everything. So I hope that it ends up, you know, me being able to actually do this versus buying used or getting this car fixed. But right now I'm optimistic that I will in fact be able to have a new car. So that's it. That's the probably final update of the Flocus. You won't see another video about this car unless something crazy happens. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for following along. This car has a few fans, both in real life and on YouTube. People I love have told me they're also going to miss this car. My best friend, who's also my co-worker, and I, we've had a lot of trips in this car. My mom and I, we've had a lot of trips in this car. People have told me they're really going to miss this car. And I'm really going to miss it too. But that is the way life goes, unfortunately. Life giveth and life taketh away. So that's it. Thank you for watching and listening and driving with me, and I'll see you later.